Is the mic working okay? Yeah, okay, cool. So, yeah, my name's James, and I'm just going to be talking about my dissertation project, which was on swift nesting in Newcastle Upon-Tyne. The project focused on the external factors which influence swift nesting habits. So yeah, I'm just going to go through all of that with you now. So just what the presentation is going to cover, I'm just going to give a bit of an introduction of who I am and what swifts are, the aims and objectives of the project, its scope, the field survey methods that I used, then what I found from the field study, and some conclusions as well. So first, just a bit of an introduction on who I am. I've just finished my master's degree on conservation and ecosystem management here at Newcastle. I graduated last week, which was a really nice ceremony. I'm also a volunteer with NHSN. I did the field skills program with them, and I'm currently doing some birding walks around Newcastle in the northeast, which I've been really enjoying. And yeah, I just love all things wildlife. Just keep getting engaged with as much as possible. So that's enough about me, just a bit more about what swifts are as well. The project focused on the common swift, Apus apus, which is the species that is found in the UK. They're a species of bird which spend almost their entire life on the wing. They only really land when they go to nest. They're specialised to nesting in urban landscapes like cities, farms and towns. And they prefer to nest in the eaves of roofs, of old houses and church buildings, anything where they can fly into quite easily, really. They've got quite a wide breeding range. They come to the UK from April to August, and they migrate from as far south as South Africa and as far north as Scandinavia. They've seen a massive population decline in recent years of up to 66% from 1995 to 2022, and that's led them to becoming on the UK Bird of Conservation Concern Red List. So that's why I chose to do this project, because I really want to help these birds get back to the numbers which they used to have. One of the strategies which is being used to increase their conservation is the installation of nest boxes, which are just a simple little bird box which goes on the exterior of a house, a church, a school, and it can recreate the lost habitat which might have been destroyed through renovations or habitat destruction. So the aim of my project was to identify the nesting presence of swifts in the suburbs of Newcastle Upon-Tyne, and determine which factors had the greatest influence on their nesting success. And to find out that aim, I used three objectives, the first of which was to compare the nesting presence of swifts in the surveys I took this year to that of previous years, to determine the effect of identified factors on nesting success, in which of these have the greatest influence, and also to determine the influence of public attitudes towards swifts, and whether or not community engagement was an important factor in the nesting success in species conservation efforts. So the scope of my project focused on two study sites. One was Hazelrig and the other was Kenton Crescent in North Kenton. These were both recommended to me as they are known nesting hotspots for swifts. They have been for many years, and on my studies as well, there was still a good number of nesting swifts in these areas, so it was a great place to study. I did preliminary studies in June at each site, and then throughout July I did two surveys each week, one at each site, and I did that until the swifts migrated, which was early August time. So when I was doing my field methods, what I actually did was basically stand around in the streets and look for swifts. So we'd go to the nesting sites, we would look up, see where the screaming parties are, which for those of you who don't know, it's when the swifts all come together in a big flock. They socialise, they feed together, and they get called screaming parties because they're generally quite noisy. So yeah, we just go in the street. I tried to focus on a different area of the street on each survey to get as much of a scope of the area as I could. Once I identified a screaming party, we would follow that party until they came below roof height, and that's a good indication of they're going to start nesting, start to quiet down. These surveys usually took place around sunset, and that went from anywhere from 9 o'clock to 10:30. Some of them even went almost to 11 o'clock because they could be quite active still. And I did this with the help of Northumberland Wildlife Trust and a few local swift groups as well, which I was really grateful for. And I've mentioned as well the external factors that I looked at, which determined the nesting presence and success. These factors were the proximity of nests to green spaces, such as trees, grasslands and hedgerows, proximity to light sources, and I use street lights for this, proximity to other swift nests, whether swifts were nesting in the installed nest boxes or the eaves, the direction the nests were facing, and the age and design of nest boxes. And I chose all of these factors as previous studies have identified that these are all the driving factors which influence swift nesting. So yeah, out of all of them I tried to see which one had the greatest influence. I also did a bit of a social study which involved a questionnaire. I apologise, the questionnaire has now closed, so that QR code doesn't work. But that was to determine how aware the public were in these areas and how engaged they were with community swift conservation, whether they thought swifts were a good thing in the area or a negative thing. And these were collected through door-to-door surveys. The questionnaire was shared through online community groups such as Facebook groups, and as well they were put on community notice boards just to get as much of an engagement as I could across the northeast. So the field study results that I collected I then put into these GIS maps which determined the effect of each identified physical factor. So the one on the left here, that's the influence on green space, and this one is the influence of roads. As you can see, both of these had a significant effect on the swift nesting. They nested quite far away from roads and quite close to green spaces. And then for the other factors, you can see they nested in close groups together, and then the distance from street lights was the only one that didn't really have a significant effect on them. So out of the 4 physical factors I identified, 3 of them were known to have a significant effect on the swift's nesting habits. And as well, the direction of nests, most of them were found to be nesting in east and west facing nests, and this is because it's away from the sun when it's setting and rising, so it keeps the nests quite cool. Whereas the north and south facing ones, they typically got quite hot, especially in the summer with how hot this summer was. And then looking at if they nested in eaves and nest boxes, both this year and the previous year, I've just noticed it says 123, that's just 23. There wasn't that many swifts, unfortunately. But yeah, they were only in eaves. There's been none in these areas which have gone into the nest boxes yet, unfortunately. And then from the questionnaire results, we found that age was a significant factor on people's opinions and awareness of swifts, whereas education wasn't a significant factor. Typically, people above 40 years old were the most positive towards swifts and were most keen to get involved with community efforts to conserve the species, such as putting up nest boxes. And then 18 to 25-year-olds were also seen as being quite keen. So yeah, that was quite a positive thing to see that age was significant. So from these results, what I recommended to do for further swift conservation is to prioritise putting nest boxes up in areas which are close to green spaces, so that the swifts have plenty of areas to feed and socialise, and far away from main roads. The reason they avoid main roads is because of the noise of the traffic. it can mess up with their navigation, and as they're quite low flies as well, it can lead to quite a lot of swifts getting hit by cars and leads to a quite high mortality rate. So avoiding that as much as possible is a really good thing. Also, to look to install more modern designs of nest boxes. The ones that are installed in these areas now are quickly becoming a bit of an outdated model of swift boxes. Someone in the Bristol Swift group has designed a new type of nest box which has the entry hole from the bottom, which is similar to how swifts enter the eaves of houses, and the inside of the nest box is completely black as well, as swifts like to nest in, in nature. They nest in caves and trees, so they like their nest to be as dark as possible, and this really simulates that for them. So I think by introducing those new nest boxes would be a very positive thing and encourage more swifts to nest. As well, swifts are really social animals, as I spoke about earlier. In their screaming parties, they feed together, they socialise together, they fly together. So installing the nest boxes quite close to existing nests would encourage new swifts to nest quite close to each other. As well, the offspring of the swifts which are currently nesting would be encouraged to then go back to these sites and nest in these new nest boxes as well. There was one nest box in the whole of my study which was prospected by a young swift. Unfortunately, it didn't go in, so it wasn't nesting there. But that nest box was really close to existing nests, so that's quite a positive thing to see that they are wanting to nest together, and hopefully over the next few years, if we keep these efforts up, these younger swifts might go for these boxes in the future. As well, promoting community engagement and education of the importance of swifts across all ages would be a really positive thing for local communities, just to make more people aware of how important swifts are and what they contribute to a local ecosystem. And to encourage the development of wilder green spaces as well, such as more hedgerows, wild gardens, stuff like that, as that would lead to an increase of insect populations, which would give the swifts more stuff to feed on, and yeah, would just be an all around a really great thing for them, and would hopefully boost numbers. So the next steps for the project is we're currently developing a Newcastle-wide swift group, just to get as much of the area involved in the project as possible. So if you'd like to get involved with that, we've got leaflets near the front door, which have little links on how you can get involved. There's currently efforts to put more nest boxes on schools and churches, so if anyone has any of those in their local area and would like to put a swift box up on there, that would be a really great thing. A lot of nests as well in these areas are at risk of being destroyed from roof refurbishment and development. So if anyone knows of any developments which are going on and wants to try and put a stop to it, or to protect the nests which are already there, that would be a really great thing as well. The data set I used to get the past swift nesting data was on RSPB's Swift Mapper, which is a really great source seeing where swift screaming parties are and where they've nested across the northeast and across the UK as well. So if you know of any swifts nesting in your local area and you'd like to put that on there, that would be really great just for us to see how more widespread the swifts are across the northeast. And as well, you can contact Northumberland Wildlife Trust if you would like a swift box of your own. And finally, I'd just like to give a few special thanks out. One for NHSN for giving me the opportunity to talk about the project today, especially to Ellie Davison and James Common, who gave me the opportunity to host swift walks and get the community more involved in swift conservation efforts. To Northumberland Wildlife Trust, and specifically Kathy Sharp, who's joined us today. I wouldn't have been able to do any of this project without her. She was the one who came to me about it, and yeah, it's been great working with her on the project. Hazelrig Swift Group as well, they've been really supportive on telling me where the swifts where they nest in these areas and helping me out on my swift walks. And then to all my friends, family and volunteers who joined me on the walks as well and supported me throughout my whole dissertation project. I wouldn't have been able to do any of this without any of the people listed there. So yeah, thank you for listening.